A geological team dropped a drone 60 feet into an abandoned well in the Ozarks, and what they found hanging in the darkness from rotted wooden beams made them stop the investigation immediately. But here's what made it worse. Those sleeping bags were suspended exactly 55 feet down, at a depth where the well shaft narrowed to just 18 inches wide. No human body could have fit through to place them there. March 17th, 2014, spring break. While thousands of students headed to beaches and parties, 4 art students from the University of Arkansas chose a different path. Emma Hayes, 21, Chris Morrison, 22, Ashley Park, 20, and Tyler Bennett, 21. They weren't looking for crowds or sunshine. They wanted something real, something forgotten. Their photography project was titled Echoes of Settlement. The concept was simple but haunting. Document the abandoned homesteads scattered throughout Ozark National Forest, the places where families once lived, loved, and eventually left behind, the structures that nature was slowly reclaiming, swallowing whole. Emma, the group's unofficial leader, had mapped out a route that would take them deep into the forest's most remote sections, far from marked trails and ranger stations. "We're not just taking pictures," Emma had told her professor 2 weeks before departure. "We're preserving memory. These places, they're dying. In 10 years, they'll be completely gone." Her professor approved the project. Her parents did not. 3 nights in the middle of nowhere, Emma's mother had said over the phone. "With no cell service? Mom, we'll have GPS. We'll have maps." Chris did 2 summers as a wilderness guide. It was true. Chris Morrison knew the Ozarks better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. He'd grown up in Mountain Home, spent his teenage years hiking every trail, climbing every bluff. If anyone could keep them safe out there, it was Chris. And Emma trusted him completely. They'd been engaged for 6 months. The ring, a simple silver band with a tiny emerald, caught the light as she packed her camera equipment. She kept looking at it, smiling. After graduation, they'd planned to move to Portland, open a gallery together. This trip was supposed to be the foundation of their first exhibition. Ashley Park, the youngest of the group, was Emma's roommate and closest friend. Quiet, thoughtful, she specialized in black and white portraiture. "I want to capture the absent," she'd explained once, "the negative space where people used to be." Her camera was always loaded with film, never digital. She believed film had a soul that sensors could never replicate. Tyler Bennett was the wild card. Charismatic, always joking, always pushing boundaries. He and Chris had been best friends since freshman year. Where Chris was cautious and methodical, Tyler was impulsive and fearless. "We're artists," he'd say. "We're supposed to make people uncomfortable." They left campus Thursday morning, March 17th, 2014, in Chris's old Jeep Cherokee. The vehicle was packed tight. Tents, sleeping bags, food for 4 days, camera equipment worth thousands of dollars. Emma's parents had insisted on a satellite phone, but Emma forgot it on her desk. She didn't want the safety net. She wanted the authentic experience. The drive took 3 hours. They entered Ozark National Forest just after noon, parking at a trailhead near Highway 7. From there, it was a 6-mile hike to the area Chris had scouted on previous trips, a valley where at least 5 abandoned homesteads stood in various states of decay. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, temperature in the mid-60s. Spring was just beginning to touch the forest, tiny green buds appearing on the branches overhead. They hiked in good spirit, Tyler playing music from a portable speaker until Chris made him turn it off. "We're here to listen to the forest, not Kendrick Lamar." They reached the first homestead around 3 p.m., a collapsed cabin, just 4 walls of rotting timber and a stone chimney standing like a gravestone. Emma immediately started shooting, circling the structure, finding angles. Ashley wandered into the tree line, photographing the way shadows fell through the canopy. Tyler climbed onto what remained of the roof, ignoring Chris's warnings about structural integrity. "There's another one about half a mile north," Chris said, checking his GPS. "Bigger, 2-story. That's where we should camp tonight." They found it just before sunset. The house was remarkable, still mostly intact, windows broken but walls standing, a sagging front porch. Someone had lived here once, maybe a century ago, raised children here, watched storms roll through these valleys. Now it was just wood and memory. They set up camp in a clearing about 50 yards from the house, not wanting to sleep inside in case the structure decided to collapse during the night. 2 tent cooking gear arranged on a flat stone. As darkness fell, they built a small fire and cooked ramen and canned chili. The forest around them filled with sound, insect, birds settling for night, the occasional crack of a branch. "This is perfect," Emma said, leaning against Chris. "This is exactly what I imagined." Tyler was already planning the next day. "We should explore inside the house first thing. Get the morning light through those windows. It'll be incredible." They talked until nearly midnight, making plans, sharing ideas. The fire burned down to coals. One by one, they retreated to their tent, Emma and Chris in one, Ashley and Tyler in the other. The forest went quiet around them. And then morning came, and everything was fine. They woke to birdsong and cool air, made instant coffee, explored the abandoned house, which was even more photogenic in daylight. Layers of peeling wallpaper, a rusted iron bed frame, stairs that groaned under their weight. Emma shot 3 rolls of film. Ashley filled an entire memory card. "There's supposed to be another homestead about a mile east," Chris said, studying his map, "and one more beyond that. If we move efficiently, we can hit both today." They packed up camp, shouldered their gear, and headed east. The trail, if it could even be called a trail, was overgrown, requiring them to push through dense underbrush. Tyler complained about thorns. Ashley was silent, focused, already composing shots in her mind. The second homestead was smaller, less intact, just a foundation and part of a chimney. But nearby, they found something unexpected, an old family cemetery, 8 weathered headstones arranged in 2 neat rows. The stones were so worn that most of the names were illegible, but one was still partially visible: Sarah Morrison, 1847 to 1871. "Morrison," Chris said quietly. "That's my name. Probably no relation," Tyler said. "Morrison's common." But Chris stood there for a long moment, staring at the stone. Emma photographed him standing there, silhouetted against the afternoon light. She didn't know it yet, but that image would later hang in her parents' living room, the last good photograph of Chris she'd ever take. They continued east. The third homestead was supposed to be close, but the terrain grew difficult. Steep hills, dense vegetation, rocky outcroppings. Chris checked his GPS repeatedly. "We're close. Should be just over this ridge." They crested the ridge around 4 p.m., and there it was. But this wasn't a house. This was just a foundation, mostly collapsed, surrounded by debris, rotted timber, rusted tools, broken glass. Nature had nearly finished its work here. In another decade, there'd be no trace that humans had ever stood on this spot. "Not much to photograph," Ashley said, but Emma was already circling the site, looking for angles. Tyler was poking through the debris, looking for artifacts, and Chris was studying the foundation, the way the stones had been laid, trying to imagine what the structure had once looked like. That's when Ashley found the well. It wasn't obvious. Vegetation had grown over it, and the wooden cover had rotted almost completely through. She nearly stepped on it, her foot breaking through the weakened boards. She jumped back with a startled cry. "Careful!" Chris rushed over, pulling her away from the edge. They cleared away some of the vegetation and broken wood, revealing a circular stone opening about 3 feet in diameter. The stones were old, covered in moss, fitted together with remarkable precision. No mortar, just stones stacked with the skill of people who knew their work would need to last generations. Tyler dropped a rock into the opening. They waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4. Finally, a distant splash, so faint they almost didn't hear it. "That's deep," Tyler said. "Probably 60 feet or more," Chris estimated. "These old wells, they dug until they hit water. Could be 80, could be 100. Emma was already setting up her tripod, positioning her camera to capture the well opening with the forest in the background. The light was fading now, golden hour sliding into dusk. "This is incredible," she said. "This is exactly the kind of detail we needed. Real frontier engineering." They spent the next 30 minutes photographing the well from different angles. Ashley shot an entire roll, fascinated by the way the darkness inside seemed to absorb light, creating a perfect black circle in the center of each frame. Tyler tried to get a shot looking straight down, but even with his camera's flash, the beam didn't reach the bottom, just darkness going down and down. "We should camp here tonight," Emma said. "Get some shots at sunrise." Chris wasn't sure. The terrain was less flat than the previous night's site, and there was something about the collapsed foundation that made him uneasy. But Emma was already unpacking, and Tyler was gathering wood for a fire, and the decision was made. They set up the tents closer to the well than they probably should have, maybe 20 feet away, because the flatter ground was limited. As night fell, they built another fire and ate dinner. But the mood was different tonight, quieter. The forest seemed darker here, the canopy thicker, blocking out the stars. "You guys hear that?" Ashley asked suddenly. They went silent, listening. At first there was nothing. Then, faint but distinct, a sound like wind moving through a tunnel, a low, hollow whistle. "It's the well," Chris said. "Air pressure, temperature differential between the surface and the water level. It's like the earth breathing." "That's not creepy at all," Tyler said. But Emma was already grabbing her camera. "That's perfect. We need to record this, document it. This is exactly what I wanted, the life in these dead places." She spent the next hour taking long exposure shots of the well opening, trying to capture the darkness, the mystery. Tyler helped, holding reflectors, adjusting light. Ashley and Chris sat by the fire, not talking much, just listening to the forest and that strange, intermittent whistle from the well. Around 11 p.m., Emma finally put her camera away. "I got it," she said, clearly satisfied. "Some of the best shots of the whole trip." They stayed up another hour, talking about plans for the exhibition, debating prints versus digital, discussing how to arrange the work. Eventually, exhaustion won. They retreated to their tent, but sleep didn't come easily. The well kept making that sound, irregular and unsettling, and other sounds too, branches cracking, movement in the underbrush. Once what might have been footsteps, just animals, Chris told himself. Deer, raccoons, nothing to worry about. Emma, lying beside him, whispered, "Do you think people died here? Like, in this house that used to be here?" "Probably," Chris said. "Frontier life was hard. Lots of people didn't make it. I keep thinking about that cemetery." Sarah Morrison. She was only 24 when she died, younger than us. "Don't think about it. Get some sleep." But neither of them slept much that night. Morning came slowly, gray and cold. A fog had settled into the valley overnight, thick and damp, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet. Chris was the first one up, checking his GPS, realizing with some concern that the battery was lower than it should be. They'd need to start heading back today, maybe skip the other homesteads they'd planned to visit. He was making coffee when he heard Emma scream. He ran to the well. Emma was standing at the edge, staring down, her face completely white. "I dropped my camera," she said, her voice shaking. "I was trying to get a fog shot, and the strap broke, and it went right in." Her professional camera, the one she'd saved for 2 years to buy. $4,000, gone. "How close were you to the edge?" Chris demanded. "I don't know, I wasn't paying attention." Tyler and Ashley emerged from their tent, still groggy. "What happened?" Chris explained. Tyler immediately said, "We can get it back." "I'll go down." "Absolutely not," Chris said. "That well is ancient. The walls could collapse, and we don't even know how deep it really is." "But we have rope," Tyler said. "We have climbing gear. I've done rappelling before. In a controlled environment. This is completely different." But Emma was already crying, and Tyler had that look on his face. that impulsive determination that made him either brilliant or dangerous depending on the day. And Chris, who should have put his foot down, who should have been the voice of reason, found himself wavering. "Let me at least check it out," Tyler said. "I'll tie off, lean in, see if I can spot the camera. If it's too dangerous, we leave it." If you're hooked on stories like this that blend real wilderness terror with unbelievable twists, hit that like button and subscribe for more. They secured a rope to a sturdy tree about 10 feet from the well, tested the knot multiple times. Tyler put on his climbing harness, clipped in, and approached the edge. Chris held the rope, maintaining tension. Ashley and Emma stood back, watching. Tyler leaned over the well opening, shining his headlamp down. "I can see it," he called. "It's not that far. Maybe 15 feet, wedged on something. I can definitely get it." "Is the well shaft stable?" Chris asked. "Looks fine. Stone walls, solid." Chris should have said no. He should have pulled Tyler back, packed up their gear, and hiked out of there. But he didn't. Tyler went down slowly, walking backward down the stone wall, the rope holding firm. 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. His voice echoed up from the darkness. "Got it. Camera's damaged, but I can wait." "What?" Chris called. "There's something else down here." Tyler's voice had changed. "There's like a ledge, and there's stuff on it. Old stuff." "What kind of stuff?" "I don't know. I can't really see." "Hand me down another light." Ashley grabbed a flashlight and Chris lowered it on a second rope. Tyler caught it, clicked it on. Several seconds of silence. Then, "Oh my God." "What?" "There's a backpack down here. A modern backpack. And there's more stuff below. I can see it. The well keeps going down, but there's items at different levels, like they're caught on ledges or something." Chris felt ice in his stomach. "Come up. Now." "There's writing on the backpack." "Let me just—" "Tyler, come up right now." But Tyler wasn't listening. He was reaching for the backpack, leaning too far, and that's when they heard it. A grinding sound, stone scraping against stone, and suddenly Tyler was yelling, "Pulling up! Pull up! The walls!" Chris pulled with everything he had. Ashley grabbed the rope too. They hauled Tyler up as fast as they could, and he came out of that well in a panic, scraping his arms on the stone edges, his face scratched and bleeding. He collapsed on the ground, breathing hard. In his hand was a faded, water-damaged backpack. "The wall shifted," he gasped. "Stones started moving. This place isn't stable." They moved away from the well, carrying the backpack. Chris turned it over, and there, barely legible on a patch, were initials, J.M. Emma opened the backpack carefully. Inside was a water bottle, empty. A granola bar wrapper. A wallet, water-damaged but intact. She opened the wallet, and they all saw the driver's license at the same time. Jason Miller, age 23, issue date 2009. "This is from 2009, Ashley whispered. "This has been down there for 5 years. But it was Tyler who noticed the worst detail. "Look at the rope," he said, pointing to the frayed end still tied around the backpack strap. "Someone tied this to something, and then it was cut. Look at that edge. That's not wear. That's a clean cut." They stared at the rope. He was right. The end was too uniform, too neat. Someone had cut it with a knife or blade. "We need to leave," Chris said. "Right now. We pack up and we get out of here." Nobody argued. They broke camp in record time. stuffing gear into bags without organization, just wanting to move, wanting to put distance between themselves and that well. Chris led the way, GPS in hand, and they started hiking west, back toward the trail they'd come in on. But something was wrong. The GPS wasn't matching the terrain. They should have hit the ridge they'd crossed yesterday, but instead the land kept sloping downward. The trees looked different, thicker, older. "We're going the right direction," Chris insisted, tapping the GPS screen. "We're heading straight west." "Then why don't I recognize anything?" Ashley asked. They kept walking. 1 hour, 2 hours. The forest seemed to press in around them, the fog still thick despite it being nearly noon. Tyler kept looking over his shoulder. Emma hadn't spoken since they'd found the wallet. "Maybe we should call for help," Ashley said. "With what?" Chris snapped. "No cell service, remember? We're 6 miles from the nearest road. But we have a whistle. We can signal." Chris pulled out the emergency whistle from his pack and blew 3 sharp blasts. The sound seemed to die in the fog, absorbed by the dense vegetation. They waited. Nothing. He blew again. Still nothing. And then, faint and distant, they heard it. 3 whistle blasts, echoing back to them. "Someone heard us," Emma said. But Chris's face had gone pale. "That's an echo," he said quietly. "That's our own whistle bouncing back." "From what?" "I don't know. A rock face? A cliff? But there shouldn't be any cliffs in this direction." They kept walking, but now everyone was scared. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no insects, just their footsteps and their breathing in that terrible, oppressive silence. Tyler saw it first. "Stop," he said, his voice barely audible. "Everyone stop." They froze. Ahead, through the fog, was the foundation. The same collapsed foundation they'd camped at. The same stones, the same debris pattern. And 30 feet away, visible through the mist, was the circular opening of the well. "That's impossible," Chris said. "We walked west for 3 hours. We couldn't have circled back, but they had. Somehow, they'd come right back to where they'd started." Emma started crying. Ashley was breathing too fast, on the edge of hyperventilating. Tyler just stood there, staring at the well, his fists clenched. "Okay," Chris said, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Okay. We just got turned around in the fog. It happens. We'll try again, but this time we'll mark our path. We'll break branches, make cairns. We'll stay on a perfectly straight line." They tried again. This time Chris led with his compass, checking it every 30 seconds, making sure they maintained a constant bearing. They broke branches as they went, piled stones into small markers. They walked for 4 hours until the sun started setting, until their legs ached and their water was running low. And they ended up at the well again. Same foundation, same collapsed timbers, same dark opening in the ground. "This isn't real," Emma whispered. "This isn't happening." But it was happening. The sun was setting. The temperature was dropping. And they were trapped in some kind of impossible loop, pulled back again and again to this place, to this well. They had no choice but to make camp. Again. This time they set up the tents farther from the well, almost 50 feet away, at the edge of the clearing. They didn't build a fire, too afraid to draw attention, though from what or who they couldn't have said. They ate cold food from cans. Nobody talked much. In the morning, Chris said, "We try a different direction. South. We'll go south and we'll keep going until we find the highway." They agreed, but none of them believed it would work. Something was wrong with this place. Something had been wrong since they'd found that well, maybe even before. Night fell. The fog grew thicker, and that sound started again. The breathing of the well, that low whistle, but louder now, more insistent. Around midnight, Emma woke Chris. "There's something out there," she whispered. Chris grabbed his flashlight and unzipped the tent. He swept the light across the clearing. Nothing, just fog and darkness and the vague shape of the well opening. But then he heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling their camp. He couldn't see anyone, but he could hear them, boots on leaves and branches. "Hello?" he called out. "We need help." "We're lost." The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the fog, a voice. "You're not lost." Chris's blood went cold. "Who's there?" "You're exactly where you need to be," the voice said. It was wrong somehow. Too flat. No emotion. "We need to get out of here," Chris said loudly. "Can you show us the way back to the highway?" Laughter, dry and hollow. "You can leave any time you want. The path is always open." "What path? We keep going in circles." "Because you keep coming back," the voice said. "Because you're drawn to it. Because you know what you did." "We didn't do anything," Emma shouted from the tent. "Didn't you?" the voice asked. And then the footsteps started again, closer now, right at the edge of their camp. Tyler burst out of his tent, flashlight in one hand, a knife in the other. "Show yourself." The footsteps stopped. And then, so close it couldn't have been more than 10 feet away, the voice said, "Look into the well. See what's waiting for you." Then silence. Complete silence. Even the wind had stopped. They didn't sleep for the rest of the night. They huddled together in one tent, all 4 of them, pressed against each other, listening to the darkness outside. Chris kept his knife in his hand. Tyler held a flashlight like a weapon. If you're gripped by this wild turn of events, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Dawn came, and the fog was still there, thick as ever. They emerged from the tent exhausted, terrified, but determined. They had to get out. They had to. "We're leaving everything except water and GPS," Chris said. "We move fast. We don't stop. We don't look back." They grabbed their essentials and started walking. South this time, Chris leading with the compass, maintaining a dead straight bearing. They walked for 6 hours, through the fog, through the endless trees, up hills and down valleys, always south, always moving. And at 2 p.m. they came back to the well. But this time, something was different. Their tent from last night was gone. All of it. The camping gear, the sleeping bags, the backpacks they'd left behind, all of it had vanished. And the well opening was bigger. Not by much, but definitely bigger. As if the stones had shifted, widened. "This is hell," Ashley said quietly. "We died. We died, and this is hell." Emma walked toward the well like she was in a trance. Chris grabbed her arm, but she pulled away. She knelt at the edge, looking down into the darkness. "Emma, get back!" Chris shouted, but Emma just stared into that abyss. "I can see them," she said softly. "I can see our sleeping bags. They're down there, hanging from something." Chris pulled her back forcibly. "That's impossible. Our sleeping bags are—" But then he stopped, because he'd been about to say, "in our tents." But their tents were gone, and so was all their gear, and nothing made sense anymore. Tyler walked to the well and looked down. He was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the others, and his face was empty of all hope. "She's right. They're down there. All of our stuff. It's hanging from wooden beams about 50 feet down, like someone arranged it there. "That's impossible," Chris said again, but even he didn't believe it. Ashley started laughing, a high, hysterical sound. "We're already down there," she said. "Don't you get it? We're already in the well. This is just what happens before we realize it." Emma looked at her. "What are you talking about?" "We fell in," Ashley said, still laughing. "We fell in yesterday, or the day before, or maybe we were always falling. And this is just our mind trying to make sense of it as we drop." "Stop it," Chris said. "Stop it right now. We're not in the well. We're standing right here. We're real." But doubt had crept into all of them. Because how else could their gear be 50 feet underground? How else could they keep ending up in the same place no matter which direction they walked? Night fell again. They had no tents, no sleeping bags. They huddled together against a tree, trying to stay warm. The temperature dropped into the 40s. They shivered and held each other, and nobody slept. The voice came back around midnight. "Why do you resist?" it asked from the darkness. "The well is patient." The well has always been patient. "What do you want from us?" Emma screamed. "Nothing," the voice said. "I want nothing. The well wants everything." "What is the well?" Chris asked. Silence. Then, "The well is deep. The well is old. The well is hungry, and you fed it." "We didn't feed it anything." "Jason Miller," the voice said. 2009. You remember him. "We never met Jason Miller," Chris shouted. "Not you," the voice said, "but your blood remembers. Your name remembers. Morrison, Sarah Morrison, 1847 to 1871. She fed the well, and the well fed her family, until it was time to pay." Chris felt like he was going to be sick. I'm not related to—" "Blood calls to blood," the voice said. "Name calls to name. The well remembers debts that last centuries." "This is insane," Tyler yelled. "This isn't real." "Then leave," the voice said simply. "Walk away. The path is open." They tried. As soon as dawn broke, they tried again. East this time. They walked for 8 hours until they collapsed from exhaustion. And when they looked up, they were back at the well. Their water was gone. Their food was gone. They'd been walking for 3 days, circling back to the same spot again and again, and they hadn't eaten or drunk anything substantial. Dehydration was setting in. Exhaustion. Desperation. "We have to go down," Emma said. "What?" Chris looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "We have to go down into the well," Emma said. "That's the only way out. That's what it wants." "That's what will kill us," Chris said. "We're already dying," Emma said, and she was right. They could all feel it. The weakness, the confusion, the way reality was starting to blur at the edges. "If we go down," Emma said, "at least we'll know. At least we'll find the answer." They discussed it for hours, but in the end, there was no real choice. They couldn't escape. They couldn't survive another night without water. The well had always been their destination. Chris tied the rope to the same tree. They'd thrown away most of their gear in various escape attempts, but the climbing rope remained, always somehow still in someone's pack, no matter what they discarded. "I'll go first," Chris said. "If it's safe, I'll call up. If something happens, you pull the rope immediately." Emma kissed him, maybe the last kiss they'd ever share. "Come back to me." Chris descended into darkness. The stone walls were cold under his hands. Damp. His headlamp illuminated maybe 10 feet ahead. Beyond that, just black. 15 feet down, he found the first ledge, a wooden beam, ancient and rotting, somehow still wedged between the walls, and there, hanging from the beam, was Jason Miller's backpack. Not the one they'd pulled up before, another one, older, more damaged. 20 feet down, another beam, another backpack. This one had no identifying marks, but it was modern, nylon, maybe from the 90s. 30 feet down, the well shaft narrowed. Chris had to turn his body sideways to continue. His breathing echoed in the confined space. The walls pressed against his chest. 40 feet down, the wooden beams became a platform, a deliberately constructed platform made from rough-hewn timbers built directly into the well shaft. And on this platform were their backpacks, their sleeping bags, all the gear that had vanished from their camp. "Impossible," Chris whispered. And then he looked down and he saw what was below. 55 feet down, at a point where the well shaft narrowed to barely 18 inches across, 4 sleeping bags hung from another beam, suspended in darkness, full, occupied. Chris's mind broke. He screamed. He screamed until his throat was raw, and he scrambled up the rope, climbing with pure panic strength, not caring that he was scraping his skin on the stone, not caring about anything except getting out of that hole. He exploded out of the well opening, collapsed on the ground, unable to speak. Emma, Ashley, and Tyler stared at him. "What?" Emma whispered. "What did you see?" But Chris couldn't answer, because he'd seen them. He'd seen all 4 of them, in those sleeping bags, 55 feet down, in a space too narrow for a human body to fit through, hanging in the darkness where no one could have placed them. He'd seen what they were going to become, and then the voice spoke one last time, no longer from the darkness around them, but from the well itself, echoing up from those impossible depths. "You're almost home." The fog closed in, the forest went silent, and one by one they felt themselves being pulled toward the edge. Not physically, worse than that, mentally, spiritually. The well was calling them, and they couldn't resist any more. They'd been fighting for days, but the well had been patient. The well had always been patient. Emma went first. She simply stood up and walked to the edge and looked down, and then she was gone. No scream, just absent. Tyler tried to run. He made it maybe 10 feet before he turned around, walked back, and followed Emma into the darkness. Ashley looked at Chris, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said, and then she was at the edge, and then she was gone. Chris was alone. He could hear them down there, not screaming, but whispering, calling his name, telling him it wasn't so bad, telling him to come home. He looked at his hands. They were translucent. He could see through them to the ground below. He was fading. He'd been fading the whole time. Chris Morrison walked to the well. He looked down into the darkness where his friends waited, where 4 sleeping bags hung in impossible space, where the answer to everything lay at the bottom of a shaft that maybe didn't even have a bottom. And then he understood. They'd never left campus. They'd never made it to the forest. The Jeep had crashed on Highway 7, a rollover accident in the first hour of the drive. They'd died on impact, all 4 of them. This had been the afterlife, this loop, this forest, this well. It was the space between life and whatever came next, and they'd been fighting it, refusing to accept it, trapping themselves in this repeated nightmare because they couldn't let go. The well wasn't a monster, it was a door, and they'd been standing in front of it for 7 years, too scared to walk through. Chris let go of the edge, and he fell, through darkness and stone and time, past the sleeping bags that were and weren't there, past the wooden beams that couldn't exist, down and down until there was no more down, just an ending that felt like peace. If this heart-wrenching journey keeps you on edge, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Dr. Patricia Moore and her geological survey team found the well in August 2021. They'd been mapping abandoned homesteads, documenting historical structures for the National Forest Service. The well was unmarked on any modern map, completely hidden by vegetation. Their drone made it down 60 feet before the shaft became too narrow to continue. The footage showed camping equipment at 40 feet, shredded backpack, broken cameras, torn clothing from multiple eras, decades worth of lost hikers and explorers. And at 55 feet, in a section of the shaft that measured only 18 inches across, 4 sleeping bags hung from a rotted wooden beam, suspended in perfect darkness. The bodies inside were never recovered. The well was deemed too unstable, the shaft too narrow. But dental records from items found at the 40-foot level confirmed identities: Emma Hayes, Chris Morrison, Ashley Park, and Tyler Bennett. If this journey through survival and mystery captivates you, hit that like button and subscribe for more.